Violence is not something we like to associate with family life, and it is difficult to accept that millions of wives and children are being beaten regularly, often to the point of causing broken bones and internal injuries, as well as bruised bodies and battered faces. It is difficult to accept, yet there it is. Where child abuse is concerned, doctors, hospital personnel, and other professional groups are now required by law in most states to report all suspected cases. Not all cases do get reported by any means, yet enough information has come to the surface in recent years to indicate both a sizable problem and one that is not limited to any particular social group. This point is made by David Honings, Director of the Child Protective Services in Westchester County, New York State.
Now we've been running on an average of 900 new cases a year. We have an equal number of blacks and whites involved in the problem. We have more poor people than affluent people. This is because I think we have more poor people in Westchester. So it also depends a lot on the makeup of the population that you're dealing with. Percentage-wise, I would say we have an equal spread among race and economic status. It cuts across all lines.
Wife beating, too, cuts across all lines. Reported cases run the gamut from women whose husbands make more than $100,000 a year to others in an economic status below the poverty level. As to the number of battered wives, there are few statistics yet, only estimates, but the number is undoubtedly high. This is clear from what happens wherever any kind of service for battered wives is started, such as a hotline or shelter. Almost immediately, there is a deluge of calls. One upper-middle-class suburban community in Maryland, for example, reported over 600 cases. That was in just one community. Up to now, nationwide, there have been very few community services for battered wives, which is among the reasons that relatively few cases get reported. As one woman explains,
everybody asks why wives take these beatings, why we don't report it. Well, who can we report it to? There's no place to go. You think the police. I've tried that. I've called them many, many times. But what can the policeman do? It's always the same thing. They tell my husband to cool it off. Once they even made him go outside for a walk. But as soon as they left, it starts all over again. So what do? You bring charges against him? Against your own husband, against your children's father. And maybe you still love him in spite of everything. If you have any hope that things will change, you don't want to bring charges against him. It's just going to make it worse. He's going to be angrier, incited to more. It's not a positive kind of act to take. And I think my husband's basically a good man. I still think that. But he's got problems, and I've paid a very, very high price for them. I've covered up the beatings for a long time. I tried to cover them up around the kids. That became impossible eventually. I used to lie to my doctor, but it finally reached a point where I didn't have to tell any lies. It was obvious what was happening. He knew I was being beaten. And of course, when I got the divorce, my doctor backed me up. And I did get a divorce finally. I had to. I really became very afraid for my own physical well-being. It was getting worse and worse. I really didn't feel I had any choice.
Only recently has the problem of battered wives and battered children received widespread public attention, and many people are uncertain how to cope with it. Some would rather not even consider it a problem. There are those who would argue that a man has the right to slap his wife around a bit if she gets out of line, or that spare the rod and spoil the child is just as valid today as it ever was. These attitudes are backed by long-standing custom, not only in American society, but in most societies around the world. The decade of the 1960s, however, was a time for changing long-standing customs and attitudes. With regard to child abuse, years of effort at last began to bear fruit. Years of effort on the part of crusading doctors, social workers, and other professionals who saw the child abuse problem firsthand and recognized it for what it is. The facts are dramatic enough. For example, just the fact that so many abused children are very young, more than half of them under 6 years of age. Nearly 25% are only 2 years old or younger. Kinds of abuse range from beatings and other forms of physical abuse to various forms of maltreatment, such as starvation. Sexual abuse of girls by their fathers or stepfathers is another problem. As would be expected, it is largely a hidden problem.
I don't know whether it happens to a lot of kids. And it's not really something you talk about. I don't think that I could talk about it now, except that, it was such a long time ago, and it's kind of like it was somebody else, not me. I don't really think about it anymore, except when I see things, like, those anti-abortion arguments, except in cases of rape or incest. And I see that word incest, and I think, yeah, incest. My mother knew about it. She never said anything, but she did know. I'm pretty sure that's why she got a divorce. Maybe not the only reason, but, anyway, I haven't seen my father for about 2 years, and I really don't care if I ever see him.
Neglect of children, maltreatment, physical abuse, sexual abuse. All of this has been going on for a long time. Then, finally, in the 1960s, as David Honings notes, some of the facts began to come to light.
The media picked up on it as a selling point. And from there, I think politically it was picked up on as a problem that something should be done about. However, what they've done about it is they've developed a huge network to catch people. Nothing of substance has been done along rehabilitative lines.
To what extent are parents who abuse their children willing to admit that they, the parents, might need treatment? Apparently nowadays, the majority are willing.
Most of the people admit it, and most of the people want help with it. Starting right out from someone going to, say, taking their child into the emergency room of a hospital, knowing full well that they'll be reported. And very seldom do people refuse to talk to us. Most of the people admit readily that they've done it, and most want help with it.
Help generally means counseling and psychotherapy, but that can be expensive. And, as Mr. Honings observed, though money has been appropriated to catch child abusers, not enough has been appropriated to give them the help they need. With regard to battered wives, the movement to do something about the problem has been slower getting underway. Also, wife beaters may be less willing than child abusers to admit that they need help.
I always felt she brought it on herself, that she was trying to deliberately provoke me. Like the way she'd just start whining out of nowhere, and almost always just when I was trying to relax. I'd come home after work, and she'd bring up all these diddly little complaints about the kids and the house and that kind of thing, and you just don't need that when you're at home and you're trying to relax, and it would get me very annoyed, and I'd lose control, and it would make me want to smash her face in. And I'm not really a violent man. I wouldn't really hurt someone, but, well, I mean, I never broke any bones or anything, but well, once I did, and it wasn't very pretty to look at, and I choked her once, but that was after she called the lawyer, and the cops would come sometimes, and, well, I mean, it's very bad, but, well, she's got a divorce now, and I don't see her very much, but, well, it's probably good for her. She's had to go out into the real world and learn some things that she didn't know before, and that's probably a good thing. That's probably a good thing.
The movement to help battered wives was an outgrowth of the crusade for women's rights in general, which developed in the 60s, a natural outgrowth in many ways. For the battered wife problem is, in many ways, tied to the overall problems of women in a male-dominated society. This is obvious from the troubles many wives have when they try to escape from husbands who are beating them up. A woman who takes her children and flees from a home where she is being brutalized may find herself suddenly without any means of financial support, and with everybody seemingly against her. Her troubles don't necessarily end either if she gets a divorce.
My husband lost his job, so he's not bringing in any money. I've been having trouble finding work. My husband says he lost his job because word got around that I'd sued for divorce because of wife beating. I suspect he was having job problems anyway before that. Maybe he was taking out those job problems on me, but that's not what he tells our friends. Our friends, they're blaming me now. I'm the one who, I'm the one who got my husband labeled as a wife beater. I'm the one who broke up our home. I'm the one who lost him his job, so now here he is without a family, without a job. And, I'm the one who ends up feeling guilty, like the criminal. And I don't know. Maybe I am guilty. Maybe I should have stuck it out a little longer. I tried for a long time. I really wanted to make it work. But I just couldn't hang in there any longer.
There are cases where the positions are reversed, where it is the husband who is attacked regularly by his wife, usually with a weapon of some kind. But he generally has more options than a woman in the same situation, with less pressure on him to stay and take it. And more likely than not, he will have the sympathy of friends and neighbors. But why all the violence in the first place? What causes husbands and wives to attack each other with weapons or fists? What causes parents to beat their children to the point where hospitalization is necessary? In cases of child abuse, there could be a number of reasons why parents beat or maltreat their children. Some of the theories are given by David Honings.
Well, one theory, which is widely publicized, is the fact that they were abused children themselves. Therefore, it's a learned pattern of behavior, how to discipline children. Another theory would be, well, even along the same lines, that they never had adequate parenting to the extent to be able to satisfy their own needs. So they come into adulthood being immature, self-centered, not being able to look beyond themselves into the needs of someone else, and they get frustrated easily and strike out. People that I've spoken to cannot honestly recall the actual physical incident that took place. And as they describe it, they've reached a point where they've lost self-control.
Yet only a small percentage of parents who abuse their children could be called psychotic. Mostly they are, as David Honings described them, self-centered persons with a low tolerance for frustration.
Children contribute to it. They can defy, they can withdraw attention and love from the parent. They can hurt through an attitude, through an expression, through some type of behavior that rejects the parent, that gets them angry.
Children may use such behavior as a weapon to get something from the parent, or more often perhaps, as a means of getting noticed. In some cases, behavior that invites a beating may be the only means children know to get their parents' attention. Children, in any case, are not necessarily little bundles of joy. If parents are not prepared for what can be a difficult job, if they have unrealistic expectations, they're going to have problems, and so will their children. Similar patterns of unrealistic expectations and frustration can be seen in many cases of wife beating. A man may expect certain things of marriage, of his job, of life in general. When things don't work out as expected, for whatever reason, the man strikes out at whatever or whoever is handiest. It may be his wife. How does the wife react? A lot depends on her particular situation. If she has her own job, if she is a fairly self-confident person, she will very likely do something. For example, she may talk her husband into going with her to a counselor, or if unable to reason with him, she may simply leave. But not every woman is in this position. Some have small children and no job. Some have been married for a while before the beatings start, so they continue to hope that somehow he will change for the better again. A great many battered wives have shown themselves to be passive personalities with negative images of themselves. They really feel they need a man to lean on, but they have chosen the wrong man. The movement to provide help for battered wives has several prongs. One of the most important is simply to establish more crisis centers and shelters where a victim can go with her children and find both professional assistance and a safe place to stay while she explores alternatives. The problem with setting up such shelters, of course, is that they cost money. More controversial is the campaign in many states to have wife-beating made a criminal offense, which it is not except in a few states like California. But how much will it help solve the problem if police are able to arrest wife-beaters and put them in jail? Many people think that counseling would be more effective. Others argue that police will take wife-beating more seriously if they are dealing with a criminal offense, rather than something to be handled in family court. Certainly the kinds of violence involved, both in wife-beating and child abuse cases, would very often be termed felonious assault in other types of cases. We have finally come to face the fact that violence of this kind does exist in the home, and that it is widespread. Now we still have to ask ourselves, what exactly do we do about it? And especially, what can young people do to make their future homes places of security and love, rather than places of pain?